the greatest indictment in the 21st century is the enthronement of man, the ascension of the self-concept. I love how in our last conversation you kind of ended us right there, and I think when I look at it, right, it is the scourge for us, right? The reparations are being meted out in the 21st century. But I feel like it's been an existential, a humanistic, almost like struggle. And does it begin in the 21st century, or is there older roots to that particular? Because it is 1000% accurate, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think it finds its patronage way back in the annals of history, right from the Genesis concept. You know, when you see Cain, right, devolving from under the government of God, right, after he murdered his brother, right, and so he departs from the present and establishes himself as a government, right? And then out of that, as he built his own city, and then from that, then evolved the Tower of Babel, right? Those were Cain's descendants. And if you remember, the main the banner or the manifesto of Babel was, let us make a name for ourselves. Right. So the self-concept there starts, or rather takes the next step in its evolution and its ascension ladder. It was all about how do we brand ourselves, how do we become the it, how do we become the center of attraction, right? And so the Tower of Babel then gets erected, and then of course God confuses it. But then you realize that out of that then evolves Babylon.
Oh. So Babel is a descendant of Babylon.
Oh, absolutely.
The city and the system.
Right. The city
are
and the
rooted
system.
in that ascension of self.
Right.
That concept.
Right. Over and above the geography is the actual manifesto, is the essence of what the culture represents. The Babel and Babylon, the system is a system that enthrones man. Is a system that puts man right at the center of his own
Which
wealth.
is why it can show up consistently across civilizations and time. And, you know, it's funny, a lot of people from the African context, or a lot of people that understand, right, the core essence of Ubuntu as a social philosophy, know that most cities are established first spiritually. Civilizations are established first spiritually, right? And then they find manifestation as all these things. I know we've had a conversation one time too where you made reference to spirit cities. So would that be, actually, as a matter of fact, could you explain briefly what spirit cities are and then tie it to that concept that essentially began from Cain, became Babylon, which now the nomenclature of Babylon as a system is consistent and is the arch nemesis even in the book of Revelation, is it not?
Absolutely.
So it's running concurrent to humanity's timeline.
Very much.
In that enthronement, it's not something for us to solve, it's a tension to manage.
Absolutely. It's
Talk to us about spirit cities,
The foundational belief system, you know, both from an Afrocentric context, but also from just a global understanding of just the nature of man, is the fact that this spirit realm is the source realm. It is the primary realm. And the physical realm is the secondary realm, or the realm of manifestation, right? Battles are first won in the spirit. That is why even when you look at how African kingdoms were contextualized, the spiritual element was always the source element. Whether it was the Zulu kingdom, whether it was the Mutapa kingdom, there was always a spirit medium in the context there, because
and even in the British context, right? Merlin and that whole King Arthur and the Round Table,
yes, absolutely. So you find that the physical realm is a manifestation of a spiritual reality. So if you know how to manipulate the source realm, you can then influence, right, the physical realm. So cities are built first spiritually before they show up in the physical context. Right. Now, interestingly, if I take you back to the beginning, right? Look at Cain, right? So Cain, right, devolves, like I said, from the government of God, right? He says, "No, I'm going to do my own thing," and he departs and goes to the land of Nod, right? And then starts his own civilization. But the physical civilization that he connects to and that he starts to evolve is birthed out of the spiritual context of saying, "I don't want to be submitted."
What's fascinating about that? First of all, the reason we're going down this particular segue to our cousins around the table, the people that are part of this conversation, is because you cannot essentially do any spiritual formation without an accurate understanding of pneumatology, the study of the spirit and those particular things. And every majority world context, whether it's African, Asian, or whatever, have come to terms with the spiritism of specific civilization and cultures and contexts. Which, as a question, before I come to my point, is this why even specific cities have very distinct and specific cultures and atmospheres? Like we were in Las Vegas on our way to the Grand Canyon, for example. It has a very specific cultural ethos, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Sin City. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You do not have to subscribe to that. You come into that philosophy, right? It's the exact same thing. Manhattan, Paris, right? The city of whatever it is.
Right.
So that speaks to, it bears witness to what you're essentially saying.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Every physical city has an atmosphere that it carries. In fact, you see, when an atmosphere is raised up and sustained, it creates a stronghold, right? And that is why you find that physical cities have spiritual characters. And it doesn't matter, right across generations, it will maintain its character as long as its formative context, its spiritual formative context has not changed. It's the same thing with the law of patterns, right?
Yeah.
Every pattern has a prototype.
Yeah.
That is where it's
pattern has a prototype.
Right. Every pattern has a prototype. But a pattern will continue indefinitely until or unless interrupted. Right?
It's a self-amplifying loop.
It's
Every pattern is.
Absolutely, absolutely. But then he that interrupts a pattern, right, becomes the prototype for the new dimension or the new direction. So you'll find that cities will maintain their character. Johannesburg has been that since the days of the gold rush. Man, it's all about what can I get out of you? But where does that come from? Hey, everybody came there to get gold. So people would take gold out of the earth. And so it releases that atmosphere where when I see you, my point is, what can I get out of you?
It's the exact same to where like some parts of like KZN, for example, to where there was a history of violence, and even in the modern day context, there's still absolutely. It's a very hot area. You know why? It's not a physical thing. It's a spiritual
thing. So when you bring it back to how the Enoch story, the Cain story evolves, right? You will find that there was a personality, a spiritual personality that evolved, that then put men at the center. We want to make a name for ourselves, you know. And then from there, of course, that's the Tower of Babel. But when you come all the way to the book of Revelation, the character is a spiritual character that then shows up in the physical context, the character of Babylon. So that is the essence of just the evolution of spirit cities.
So basically what you're saying is right now, this indictment that you talked about, which is a direct affront, number one, to the culture of Ubuntu, is the sense that we are coming head to head with an iteration of the Babylonian system, which evolved with Cain's self, aggrandizement in a sense. And it is going to find its culmination as Babylon in the book of Revelation, when the God who is going to interrupt that pattern will become the prototype. He's going to judge that pattern.
Right.
But it also speaks to the fact that even though temporary, we can also, in our modern day context, redeem cities and cultures and contexts. The same thing that happens with Daniel, where there was a principality over a specific place. And I think that's incredibly important. Now, as I make my pivot point, it's incredibly important as people that are interested in spiritual formation, albeit from an Afrocentric lens, because, right, the expression of our spiritual formation is the fact that we then begin to live lives which are light to other people, and our existential expression becomes evangelistic in a sense. You know what's interesting about this is when we go back to the book of Genesis, right? I believe every revelation that I've had in my spiritual formation comes from the fact that Genesis 1:26, God says, "Let us make man in our image and according to our likeness." Now, we know linguistically, right, that American English or English isn't as linguistically advanced as languages like Hebrew, or like even Greek, or even Zulu or Ndebele, for example.
Right. Yeah.
So when I was reading that, it says, "Let us make man in our image and according to our likeness," the English translation, I initially thought it was a redundancy, Dr. T, until I went into, I went back into the history, right, of that, into the etymology of those particular words. And I noticed something interesting, that the word image is the word telem, right? And the word likeness is the word demuth. And basically, so God's divine idea was, let us make man in our image and according to our likeness. But a direct American translation of those two is form and function.
Right.
So when he says, let us make man in our image and according to our likeness, he's saying, let us make man in our form,
right,
to execute our function. Right. So Telem, right, is the likeness. Demuth is the manifestation of what that essentially looks like. And I think that's important because the last generation, right, as evidenced by the runaway sales of this book called The Purpose-Driven Life, right, was that there was a fascination with this thing called purpose, as if purpose was the redemption for a life lived in complete adherence to the values of self. But I want us to, even right now as we do this, I want us to go deeper into an understanding of the individual, because remember, Ubuntu is the essence of the individual expressed collectively into an operating system, into a cultural operating system. I want to go deeper into the individual, but I want to go at it from the context of purpose, because from what you're saying is purpose is redeemed. It becomes the cultural stronghold through which cities and cultures and all the good things that were meant to redeem are formed. So can you talk to me about the essence of the individual, Ubuntu, and the purpose expression of that Ubuntu in the context of Abantu or Ubuntu?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one way to kick it off is to create an understanding of the concept of the print. Right. The fact that the concept of the print. It's very important to understand that everybody that is born into this earth must have an understanding of the print. You are born with a print. You live with a print. When you die, you leave a print behind. Right.
You're born with a print.
Yes.
You live with a print.
Right.
And when you die, you leave a print
You
behind.
leave a print behind.
Let's go deeper.
You know, I remember my grandmother say, hey, you know what, there is a place, you know, where King Lobengula's chariot left a print, you know.
That is so funny. You guys were watching King Lobengula. He was the formation of the Ndebele kingdom, basically, when
Right.
he left. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's funny.
So the first print that every human carries, right, is what is called the blueprint. The blueprint. The blueprint speaks to the context of purpose. Everybody, of the 8 or 9 billion people on planet Earth, each and every one of us, we carry these 4 prints. And the first one is the blueprint, that speaks to purpose. Now, here is why this is very interesting, is because, remember, purpose is the central, I always say purpose is the fuel in the human tank. Right, it's the fuel, because when you take purpose away, humans disintegrate. Take purpose away from a relationship, the relationship will fall apart, whether it's romantic or whether it's business. No matter how long it has been around, it will fall apart. Take purpose away from an organization, humans will disconnect from it, even if it's profitable. But if it's not doing what it said, what it was created
Because
to
the
do.
purpose mandate was hardwired into us at that creation in our image and according to our likeness.
Absolutely.
Right.
Humans buy fundamentally into purpose.
Yeah, that's good.
That is why, Nelson Mandela said, hey, coming out of prison, right? The purpose is to liberate both the oppressor and the oppressed. For to be truly free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. Right. He says, this ideal I hope to live for and achieve, but if necessary, I have the capacity to die for. Right. Why? Because when humans connect to purpose, their lives become susceptible to purpose. They become submitted to purpose, in essence, right? So purpose is a higher level of life, and that is what governs humans. Take purpose away from a nation, it loses its way. Take purpose away from a community, it loses its way. The gift can be there, the skills can be there, but without purpose, there is no true north. So that's the first print. Everybody must understand their purpose print. Because remember, everything operates best according to what it was designed for. So the individual must understand what's my purpose, the community, the nation, all the different constructs that create a society must understand that. The second one is what I call the fingerprint. The fingerprint. Right. Remember, and this is the uniqueness about the fingerprint. You've got 10 fingers and you've got 10 toes. Each one of your fingers and your toes has a different print. Right. And this is what makes you unique. Right. So you've got a different pattern, whether it's hole, whether it's loop, and all of that. And the fingerprint, since about 1900, became the main unit that was used for identity.
Yeah.
Right. Because before that, they used to use facial recognition, facial features. And then they found that the guys, who changed, and then deny that they are the ones who did the crime. Or the guy with the thin nose would go, would perform some surgery and say, no. And say, your dude had a very thin nose. So now, but the fingerprint is interesting. You know why? Because it doesn't duplicate and it doesn't repeat. If, God forbid, you lost your fingerprint in a fire, 3 months later, it will show up exactly the same way it was. And it's durable for life. So it's one thing that human...
So you can't file or burn off your fingerprints or whatever.
No.
When it grows back.
It grows back. It grows back. In fact, it is created from the pressure, right, of the amniotic fluid while you are still in the womb. That pressure creates what are called epidermal ridges. And once those are established, they stay with you for life. Now, that then speaks to the context of identity. You have to understand, who am I? That is where now, your conscious level of understanding, your neocortex comes in, but that's also where your subconscious makeup comes in, right? The 21 prime directives of your subconscious mind. All of these create a unique you with a context of identity, understanding who am I. That's where the context of your values come in as an individual. Then it creates this unique construct called the individual. That's print number 2. Print number 3 is what I call the thumbprint. Right, the thumbprint is very interesting because the thumbprint, even culturally, people refer to how you sign off, and in the context of a thumbprint, they say, well, we can see your thumbprint all over this thing. Why? Because humans sign off. If you've been in a room,
you do unique. You could be doing the exact same thing, but you have a unique flair.
You have
as
a
an
unique
individual
flair.
how you do it.
It goes to a point where within the African village, right?
That's right.
One of the of how community was lived out.
Yeah.
Is the fact that if there is a widow in the community, the rest of the village comes together to help her plow her field.
That's right. Which is a core tenet in the context or the culture of Ubuntu.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
That communal pulling together.
That
correct.
communal pulling together,
Yeah.
right? Right. We close gaps,
Yeah.
right? It's all about closing gaps. So we close gaps. If she's a widow, we come together. We help her plow her field.
That's right.
And then at lunchtime, everybody brings food. We eat together, right?
The OG potluck, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But now here's the interesting thing. The men will taste the traditional beer and they will tell you who brewed it. They will taste the food, the meal, and they will tell you who made that. The women are not in the room. Or the
Same
men is not in the room.
ingredients,
Same
same-
ingredients,
Right.
but they will tell you there is this omboti is from Madlamini.
That's right.
Right? They
Yeah.
will tell you that this is from so and so. Why? Because we sign off. We sign off. I mean, you can look at different designers and you can say, oh, that's a David Tlale dress over there. He's not in the room. But what are you seeing? Seeing his signature. Because humans leave a print in everything that
The
they touch.
uniqueness of that print, right? That speaks to the value that people pay for that particular thing.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Within the Western context, we call it a brand, right? We call it a brand. You know, that's where, remember, the evolution of branding came from the fact that a rancher would take a hot iron, right?
that's
An
right.
iron, and
Put
then
it
they
in
would,
fire.
and then they would
Brand
put,
their cattle.
then they would brand the cattle. It was the searing of the hot iron on the skin of the cow, right? So even when he was not there, guess what? The mark remained over there. He had signed himself off. So the power, and this is where Ubuntu becomes very powerful in the sense that community becomes the fabric on which the painting is put. Now, branding operates on the principle that what you've signed off remains entrenched on the environment. Right. For example, if today, say for example, Coca-Cola lost all their product in a fire, tomorrow morning they will still be worth billions. But if everybody who's ever had an experience with Coca-Cola woke up tomorrow morning with amnesia, or they'd had such a terrible experience with the product and they wrote it off, that brand is worth nothing. So in essence,
it's not the product, but
the
the
true
collective
value of the brand is not in what you think about yourself, but it is how it has been reflected and entrenched in the environment, in the society.
the same mirror concept about Ubuntu that you were talking about when it comes communally.
Yes. I am because we are.
Yeah.
The true value of your identity in terms of how you understand it is in how you walk it out
So
with other people.
in a sense, and we could even extrapolate that into people's self-concept, what you are saying is it's never necessarily what you bring that places value. It's how people estimate your contribution.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I like that. Francois Dutoit,
right.
basically, he says, he kind of posited this and he's like, does a diamond inherently, if you could lend, right, agents of diamond, would a diamond be aware of its value? And the essence of what he was essentially talking about was like, no, because the value of a diamond, right, as opposed to every other rock, is the value that we assign to it itself.
Right.
So which I think is why it's incredibly important, even within the context of the spiritual formation, for us to understand this. All of the prints are important, but I believe this particular print is incredibly important because the enemy's biggest, right? The enemy's biggest trap, number one, will be division, which is why when the Holy Spirit comes, he comes as the Spirit who restores oneness and unity in that particular sense. So if he ostracizes me from my community, right, he basically blinds me from seeing my actual value and the community from enjoying and therefore estimating the value that God has placed upon me.
Of course, that is why one of the biggest, weapons that the enemy uses is isolation, right? Right. He isolates you, and once he isolates you, then now he can really work on your perception, or on your identity,
That's brilliant.
on how you live.
Never give up the habit of gathering together. That's why the ecclesia, the church, the concept of gathering, even in the modern day context where you can watch something without having to gather, it is still important to brick and mortar gather in the same specific place, because once
Right.
again, is the concept of community.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the
100%.
third print.
That's
Let's
the third
go.
print.
Uh-huh.
Right. The fourth print
Yeah.
is what is called the footprint. Right. The footprint speaks to the context of influence. It speaks to the threshold of your influence. It speaks to impact. It speaks to legacy. So that you are able to actually measure how well am I growing in the context of making a difference in community. One of the biggest things that we need to understand is that we have to leave things better than we found
That's
them.
good. That's good.
You know,
that's
that's
good.
always my beef with politicians.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times, we leave things worse than we found them in the motherland.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So everybody must become aware of those four key prints: your blueprint, right? Your fingerprint, your thumbprint, and your footprint, because that is what connects you to a purposeful life.
Man, and as we land this conversation here, I think it has brought us neatly to this particular doorstep. Ubuntu, the whole concept of Ubuntu, we almost rebranded it in a sense and said, more accurate than I am because we are is umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu.
Yeah.
The human is humane through and for humanity.
Come
So
on.
in that particular aspect, for our next conversation, I want us to then go deeper into how the individual, fully aware, actualized around those four prints, then turns around and becomes a contributing force to society, because the whole Ubuntu context, right? The whole Judaic context, which is why it was so coherent when the Bible came to the African context, is simply this: your true value is how you show up for the community and for the people around you. So join us for the third conversation coming up next.